This is the second episode of the famous people who passed away in 1746. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. John Peter Sanger. He was born in October 1697 and he died in July 1746. His age was 48 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a German-American painter whose trial for libel established an important precedent for freedom of the press in colonial America. A German painter and journalist in New York City, Sanger printed the New York Weekly Journal. He was accused of libel in 1734 by William Cosby, the royal governor of New York, but the jury acquitted Sanger, who became a symbol for freedom of press. In 1733, Sanger began printing the New York Weekly Journal, which voiced opinions critical of the colonial governor, William Cosby. On November 17, 1734, on Cosby's orders, the sheriff arrested Sanger. After a grand jury refused to indict him, the Attorney General, Richard Bradley, charged him with libel in August 1735. Charles Radcliffe. He was born in September 1693 and he died in December 1746. His age was 53 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was execution. He was one of the few English participants of the Rising of 1715 and 1745. The Radcliffes were Catholics from Northumberland with long-standing links to the exiled Stuarts. Sentenced to death in 1716, he escaped and spent the next 30 years in Europe. He was captured at sea along with his eldest son in November 1745 en route to Scotland and executed on 8 December 1746 under the warrant issued in 1716. His son James was released and later settled in Slindon, West Sussex. In December 1716, Charles escaped from Newgate prison with 13 other prisoners when a door was left open and made his way to France. He spent many years in Rome, the location of the Stuart court post 1718, including a period as private secretary to Prince Charles. Francis Hutcheson. He was born in August 1694 and he died in August 1746. His age was 52 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a leading figure in the Scottish Enlightenment, known for his work on moral philosophy and the concept of the greatest happiness of all. He was an Irish philosopher, known as one of the founding fathers of Scottish Enlightenment, born in Ulster to a family of Scottish Presbyterians. He was a professor of moral philosophy at Glasgow University and is remembered as author of a system of moral philosophy. Hutcheson was an important influence on the works of several significant Enlightenment thinkers, including David Hume and Adam Smith. In Dublin, his literary attainments gained him the friendship of many prominent inhabitants. While living in Dublin, Hutcheson published anonymously the 4 essays for which he is best known. Josiah Burchett. He was born in 1665 and he died in October 1746. His age was 81 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. A long-serving secretary of the Admiralty, noted for his dedication to the Royal Navy and his published works on naval history. He was a British naval administrator and Whig politician who sat in the English and British House of Commons between 1705 and 1741. He was Secretary of the Admiralty in England, a position he held for almost 50 years, from 26 September 1694 to 14 October 1742. In addition to his administrative duties, he was the author of the first general history of the Royal Navy, published in 1720 and based on official Admiralty records. He was a clerk to Samuel Pepys, the English civil servant famous for his diary from about 1680. He fell out of favor with Pepys in about August 1687 but gained the respect and favor of Lord Admiral Edward Russell, and in June 1691 he was appointed Russell's secretary. In this role, he alternated between active service when Russell was at sea and employment at the Admiralty Board. Lady Grizzel Bailey, she was born in December 1665 and she died in December 1746. Her age was 80 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a celebrated Scottish poet and songwriter, known for her evocative songs reflecting the lives of ordinary people. Her accounting lodgers, in which she kept details about her household for more than 50 years, provide information about social life in Scotland in the 18th century. When she was 12 years old, she carried letters from her father to a Scottish conspirator in the Ray House. Plot: Robert Bailey of Jerviswood, who was then in prison. Hume's sympathy for Bailey made him a suspected man, and the king's troops occupied Redbrace Castle. He remained in hiding for some time in the crypt of Polwarth Church, where his daughter smuggled food for him, but on hearing of execution of Bailey in 1684, he fled to the United Provinces, where his family joined him soon after. They returned to Scotland after a glorious revolution. Thomas Baker, he was born in September 1656 and he died in July 1746. His age was 89 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English antiquarian and historian, noted for his work on British history and culture, especially his contributions to historical preservations. He was the grandson of Colonel Baker of Coke, Durham, who won fame in the English Civil War by his defense of Newcastle upon Tyne against the Scots. Thomas was educated at the Free School at Durham and went to the St. John's College, Cambridge, where he later obtained fellowship. Lord Crewe, Bishop of Durham, collated him to the rectory of Long Newton in his diocese in 1687 and intended to give him that of Satchfield with a prebend, had not Baker incurred his displeasure by refusing to read James II's Declaration of Indulgence. The bishop, who himself was afterwards specially accepted from William III Act of Indemnity. King Philip V of Spain, he was born in December 1683 and he died in July 1746. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was stroke. He was the King of Spain from the 1st November 1700 and 14th January 1724, and again from 6th September 1724 to his death in 1746. His total reign is the longest in the history of the Spanish monarchy, surpassing Philip IV, although his ascent to the throne participated the War of Spanish Succession. Philip V instigated many important reforms in Spain, most especially the centralization of power of the monarchy and suppression of regional privileges via the Nueva Planta Decrees and restructuring of the administration of the Spanish Empire on the Iberian Peninsula and its overseas regions. Francesco Trevisani, he was born in April 1656 and he died in July 1746. His age was 90 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Italian Baroque painter, renowned for his delicate religious compositions and contributions to Roman art. In Rome, he was supported by Cardinal Pietro Ottoboni. He was strongly influenced by Carlo Maratta, as is manifest in his masterpiece, the frescoes in San Silverto in Capita, 1695 to 1696. In this commission, he worked alongside Giuseppe Bartolomeo Chiari and Ludovico Gimignani. In Rome, he was favored with the patronage of Cardinal Chigi. Chigi employed him in several considerable works and recommended him to the protection of Pope Clement XI, who not only commissioned him to paint one of the prophets in San Giovanni Laterano, but engaged him to decorate the cupola of the cathedral in Urbino. There he represented in fresco allegories of the four quarters of the world, in which he displayed much invention and ingenuity. St. George Gore St. George, he was born in June 1722 and he died in September 1746. His age was 24 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Irish nobleman and soldier who served in the British Army and whose death left a legacy among Irish aristocracy. In 1733, he succeeded his father as a baronet. He assumed the additional surname of St. George to inherit the estates of his maternal grandfather, whose only son had died without issue in 1721. He represented County Donegal in the Irish House of Commons from 1741 until his death in 1746. He was also appointed High Sheriff of Fermanagh in 1746. On 22 September 1743, he married Anne Burton, only daughter of Francis Burton and sister of Francis Conyngham, 2nd Baron Conyngham. St. George died without children, aged only 24, and was succeeded by his younger brother Ralph. Christian VI. He was born in November 1699 and he died in August 1746. His age was 46 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a king of Denmark and Norway from 1730 to 1746, the eldest surviving son of Frederick IV and Louise of Mecklenburg. He is considered one of Denmark, Norway's more anonymous kings, but he was a skilled politician, best known for his authoritarian regime. He was the first king of the Oldenburg dynasty to refrain from entering any war. During his reign, both compulsory confirmation and a public nation-wide school system were introduced. His chosen motto was "For God and the People." He was known for advancing education and modernizing the administration of his kingdoms. The Pietist views of King Christian influenced much of his ecclesiastical polity. Although both nobility and the common people secretly resisted the king's influence, this did not mean that it was without effect. Georg Steller, he was born in March 1709 and he died in November 1746. His age was 37 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was fever. He was a pioneering naturalist and explorer, known for his work with Vitus Bering during the Great Northern Expedition. He was a German-born naturalist and explorer who contributed to the fields of biology, zoology, and ethnography. He participated in the Great Northern Expedition, and his observation of the natural world helped the exploration and documentation of the flora and fauna of the North Pacific region. Steller pursued studies in theology and medicine before turning his attention to the natural sciences. In 1734, he joined the Russian Academy of Sciences as a physician, eventually being selected to accompany Bering's expedition to the uncharted waters between Siberia and North America. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.